Okay, got recording going. So welcome everybody. I'm Amanda Woodward. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a professor in the School of Social Work at Michigan State. Kahari, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kahari Brown. I'm an associate professor of sociology at Wayne State.
And we are two of the Mukwar faculty, and we are here to talk about sort of time management and how different ways to deal with all of the things that we're expected to do as faculty. Just a couple of housekeeping things real quick for those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom. So first of all, we are recording so that we can share this with people who are wanting to be here but are not able to attend. So just keep that in mind. You can change the view up in the right-hand corner. You can toggle back and forth between speaker view where you see the person who's talking large, or gallery view where you have sort of a Brady Bunch view of everybody. So you can pick what works for you. You can down at the bottom left corner, you can mute, stop your video. And then to make discussion easier, we'll be asking people to chime in with questions and comments. You can use the chat function, which is down in the toolbar at the bottom. And some of you may also have reactions. On the right-hand side, you can also use one of those to sort of pop up on your screen like Angie just did. And that will kind of signal to us that you want to speak, and then you can unmute. Kahari, you just raised your hand. How did you do that?
In the participants icon, you see invite. You click the participants icon, and then on the left it says invite, mute me, and then there's 3 periods there. You click that, and there's a function that allows you to raise your hand or lower your hand.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, we all learned
but then
something.
You can, yeah. Yeah.
So there's a couple of different ways to let us know you want to say something, just to kind of try and help manage the conversation a little, because it's very easy to all talk over each other in these video conferences. So we're here today to talk about sort of time management and how to do all of the stuff that we need to do. And recognizing that when we first, the context is a bit different than when we first talked about doing this, which was several months ago. So some of the challenges people may be facing and might be a little different than they were. So we can talk about some of that as well. We want to make this as interactive as it's possible for us to do in this setting. So we've kind of organize this rather than a PowerPoint. We have some questions that we were going to throw out to you guys to sort of prompt conversation, and then Kahari and I can kind of share our circumstances. We're all kind of at different places and different settings, and we will just sort of manage the conversation from there. And the other thing I just want to say too is that, this is tips and tricks. There's sort of lots of information about ways that people manage time and manage academic work. And there's some research even on some of this, but it is kind of personalized. Again, because our contexts and situations are different, work styles are different. So hopefully we can just hear from a lot of different people about the ways that we approach things, so that we can all kind of put some new things into our toolbox to help us be productive scholars. So the first question that we had put out there, I think it's important to think about making sure you're aligning how you're spending your time with your priorities, and your priorities need to be aligned with your workload and what you're going to be evaluated on for tenure and promotion. So the first question really is like, what is your workload? I suspect it varies across all of our different roles and institutions. And what will you be evaluated on for tenure and promotion, and is it clear? And if not, how can we think about how making it more clear, ways of finding that out? So anybody want to share kind of what your workload is and what your understanding is of what you're going to be evaluated on? Hari, maybe.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, Rihanna, go ahead.
I'm Rihanna. I'm at the School of Public Health at Michigan. I need to essentially like sell a kidney and create a new product in 5 years. So they want me to have 8 to 10 pubs a year, an R01 or an equivalent by tenure, and to have some sort of like, yes, cure coronavirus. Yes, that's effectively it. Or like to explain the social determinants that go along with coronavirus, like every day. Yeah, so 8 to 10 pubs a year, so somewhere around like 50 or 60 by the time we go up. R01 equivalent, and international or like national, at least for tenure, national representation on some sort of something. So that's my life.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't, this was a long time ago for me, but when I was junior faculty, oh, is somebody saying something? Someone said something here. Okay. When I was a junior faculty member a long time ago, my chair had a meeting with me probably, I think maybe the first month after I was hired, and explained what was required for the number of publications and the teaching load. We had an annual review every year that went over our productivity. And so it was clear early on what was expected. I mean, the chair met with the junior faculty every year. They also encouraged us to attend promotion and tenure meetings that were sponsored by the college. So we didn't have faculty mentors that were assigned to us then, but it was very clear to what was expected of us. So we didn't have to guess. So for me, that was very helpful, just being very clear what were the expectations early on, and every year being told how close I was to meeting my tenure goals.
Does anybody not have clear expectations? Oh, Katrina.
Hi, good morning. I'm in the School of Social Work, assistant professor, and also evaluated on research, teaching, and service. It's clear that research is the most important of those 3 buckets, though there have been discussions about expectations for teaching and service. For research, in terms of publications per year, there isn't a firm number, but when talking to the Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs, I don't have a chair in the School of Social Work. We don't necessarily have departments. So most of my discussions about tenure come in terms of leadership from our Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs. And I get the sense that somewhere around at least 4 publications a year, with most of those being first author, would be reasonable. And it was interesting after my first year annual reviews, finding out that publications that were, second author weren't as valued, because I'm someone who had been in public health for quite a while, and so being in a place where it's kind of first author and other was very new to me. So that's something I found out after my first year annual review. In terms of grants and funding, but there is an expectation that you will try to receive internal and external funding, but there's no type of funding you have to get in order to be in the clear for tenure in the School of Social Work here.
Anybody else want to share or have questions about sort of workload expectations? I think the two examples are pretty, 3 examples with Kahari as well. There's pretty typical of kind of the range and variety that sometimes there's very clear, like you need to get this number of publications and you need to get, you know, an R01. Sometimes it's like, I was never given a number of publications, and it changed from year to year, depending on, I don't know, people's mood. So one of the pieces of advice I also got was to try and be as productive as I would need to be to get tenure at like an institution that's sort of either a peer institution or just kind of above my institution. Because then if you need to move on, you are positioning yourself well going forward. There's a question, would any of this information ever be included in the contract? In a perfect world, yes. You would have an offer letter that clearly defines the expectations for tenure, and those annual reviews. When you get sort of a letter from an annual review, it would clearly state, you know, here's where you are and here's what you need to do moving forward. It's not, unfortunately, it's not a perfect world. So, you know, that varies. And for me, changed over the course of time. Like my offer letter wasn't that clear. Annual review letters up till about halfway through were sort of like, woohoo, you're doing great, keep doing what you're doing, without any really specifics. And then with a change of director, they got way more specific. So let's move on to challenges, which I think is kind of, this is the meat of what we want to talk about. You know, you want to align what you're doing and your time that you're spending with your priorities, that you know, what you are being evaluated on, but there's lots of challenges that people face to doing that. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you are facing that you want to talk about?
Well, I can mention a challenge that I had. This is not specific to the time period that we're in right now. But one of the challenges that I had when I was going up, I was a junior faculty member, was teaching new classes. Because that took a lot of time. And I wasn't able to do a lot of writing when I was teaching a new class. So that was tough. One of the things I was able to do, maybe 2 years in, was to request that I could teach my own class. So I taught a class on religion and politics, and that's exactly what I'm doing my research on. So I was doing both at the same time. So that helped a lot, being able to teach my own class and go to the chair and request classes that I would like to teach. But teaching a class for the brand new prompts, I wasn't able to get anything done that term. So I think that happened just once, that I had to teach a brand new class before I went up for tenure. But that was a challenge for me.
Yeah, new prep.
I have a quick question for you. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So I had a quick follow-up question for you. You said that, you know, that was a challenge teaching classes. And what if you given those classes, say, early on in the tenure process, right? Where, you know, I guess obviously you think you have more time than you do.
Right.
How did you still meet your yearly requirement for the number of publications that you had to get? Did you have to do stuff in the summer? What type of effective strategies did you employ to get through that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely what I had to do. I mean, summer times are just pure writing times. That's it. I'm just writing all summer. And then I would just hurry up to, you know, to prepare for my class, maybe a few weeks before the semester started. But that term where I had to teach the new class, I didn't get anything done. I got very little done that term. So I had to, you know, every week I was kind of just scrambling to get the lectures together for the class. So it was just very difficult for me to get I didn't get any writing done that term. So that was a big challenge for me, but my chair was understanding when I went to her at the time and requested that I teach my own class. And that following term, it was much better because my research and my teaching was aligned. But to the extent that you're able to do it, I would try to appeal to your chairs or the deans and make the case that you would prefer not to teach a new class. Or if you are teaching a new class, request that you teach it again the following term, so there's no new preps. So you teach, a new public health course, I would request that you can teach it the next term because you already have the preps. Because for everyone, research is the number one thing that you're being evaluated upon.
It also can be helpful if you can, if you're teaching more than one class a semester, so if you can get 2 sections of the same class. For a while, my school did not want to do that because their argument was that students needed to have choice in faculty. But we actually did kind of advocated for ourselves as junior faculty. We did a little survey of students about what the main things were that decision points in terms of deciding which section of required courses they took. And it was not, faculty choice was very low on the list. It was more about the timing of the class, right? And whether it was an online or a face-to-face class, because we have online classes. So we use that to advocate for ourselves that that was a bogus argument, and that if we want to have productive researchers, then we need to do this to help with prep time. So there are things that sometimes that you can advocate for change, like asking to teach a class on your subject and other things. I think the other thing I have kind of learned recently about just in general how we prepare our classes. We're doing curriculum revision in the school, and so we're working with some curriculum theorist folks to help us through some of that. And across the board, we tend to cram too much into our courses, and that one of the things that we've been talking about as a school is how we can include more advanced content into our required courses. And one of the ways that you do that is, you only actually plan 80% of the material over the course of the semester, and also within a particular class session. It doesn't have to be scripted. You don't have to cram in, fill every minute. That gives you flexibility to adjust what you're doing to meet the class where they are. So slowing down, speeding up, providing more. But it also makes it easier on you as an instructor in terms of how you prep. You don't have to, script every minute of every class section. And that's something that gets easier over time. But we tend to over prepare, I think, and spend too much time prepping.
One of the challenges that I face relates to managing the different types of research activities that I am expected to do. So figuring out the right balance of time to spend on data analysis versus manuscript writing versus grant, proposal writing and drafting, and because all those things are important and counts for me in terms of research, but there's only so much time and energy. And so I think I'm always making the decision about, where I'm going to put my time this week, this month, with, the end goal in mind. A helpful discussion I did have with my associate dean during the first year was, looking at my record. He said, well, I think that it's okay for you to spend a little less time with writing manuscripts so you can improve your record as it relates to funding. That doesn't mean stop the manuscripts, but something's got to give. So it sounds a little silly, but it can be hard, I think, especially as someone who is more comfortable writing manuscripts, because that's what I've done a lot more of, to then take the time to switch and write a different way to me, which is grant writing and planning. And then once you actually get the grant, taking the time to make sure, the project goes along smoothly. So for me, it's still figuring out how to juggle much more of what's expected from me in terms of research than, what I was exposed to as a student or postdoc.
Yeah, I think that, that's sort of project management stuff, for one thing, is not something that we're taught, right? Maybe supervising students or staff on that project work is not something that we're usually taught. So those are kind of things that we have to learn on the fly, and then figuring out how to balance balance that is tricky. I think the planning the semester is something that I found really helpful for that. I don't know if Katrina, it was you that had mentioned that you do the MC
Mm-hmm.
FED.
The MCFDD every semester needs a plan. Yeah, that's a great webinar. And I will say, like, I love to plan. I love to have checklists and spreadsheets, and I don't necessarily think that it's the planning part that I struggle so much with. It's just maybe just having to make what feels like to me so many different mental shifts and the type of work that I engage with from day to day. So I'm still trying to figure out the best way to make those shifts. One faculty member I talked to, their strategy is to kind of work on, like, if she's doing a paper, just one paper a week, and or one paper for the next 2 weeks, just kind of keep a singular focus on one thing instead of jumping around to other things. And I understand why that works, but I also understand why you can be hesitant to do that, because there's so many other things that need attention. So I think it's more about kind of, making the decisions about where to spend the energy when so many things are pulling for your research time.
One thing that I've found helps with that too is, number one, and people often roll their eyes when I say this, but tracking how you spend your time for a week or two, so that you know how you're actually spending your time, and paying attention to what times of day or what times of week you do different tasks well. So for me, I mean, I write in the morning, or anything that requires a lot of concentration. If I don't do it before noon, it's not going to happen, because after that, my brain just doesn't function the same way. So getting the deep thinking, making sure that I really schedule my time so that meetings are in the afternoons. I shouldn't say ever, but I try really hard to protect the afternoon for other work and have meetings in the afternoons. And then an email is something that, I try really hard to only do in the afternoons. And some of the project management stuff. So I'm actually 50% admin right now in our school. So I'm the director of our MSW program, and I'm associate director in the school. So half of my time is actually the administrative stuff, and I'm not teaching currently, but the administrative stuff can fill every minute of the day. So protecting that research time is challenging, but that kind of stuff is something that I can do in the afternoon. And it's akin to the project management piece so it's figuring out what I can delegate to other people and kind of communicating that stuff, meetings. So kind of figuring out your works, when you do work best. I mean, I have colleagues who write at night because that's when their brain is working at its maximum for that. So kind of figuring some of that stuff out, and then blocking out your week accordingly. I mean, and thinking of the work in blocks. So, which I guess is sort of to your point, Katrina, about like that switching back and forth, kind of multitasking stuff. We don't really do that, I think, as well as we think we do. So if you really block out chunks of time, and for me, 2 hours a block is kind of like my max of where, like, there's diminishing returns after 2 hours. So I'm going to write this paper, I'm going to work on it for 2 hours, or I'm going to do analysis today and I'm only going to do it for 2 hours. So, I mean, I think that kind of understanding how you work and blocking things out is really helpful. I think, Kahari,
and that kind of reminds me.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that reminds me too of discussions about energy management. So figuring out like what type of energy it takes to do the different things you have to get done, and blocking your schedule around where your energy levels are going to be throughout the day and for different tasks. And thinking about that too has been helpful for me as well.
Yep. I think from an earlier conversation that Kahari and I have different approaches to this. So I wondered if you wanted to jump in and share some of your thoughts.
Sure. No, I'm in agreement with what both of you are saying. I think it's important to understand how you work. So Amanda, you said in the morning time, you feel the most efficient. You feel your brain is firing most synapses at that time. So that's the time that you block off to do your writing. But so yeah, we have to pay attention to ourselves. You know, when we think that we're the most, when we think we can write the time of the day that we can write the best, or when you think the best time of the day to do analysis and try to interpret our own analysis. For some of you, like as you stated, Amanda, you can set off a set amount of time in a set part of the day, and that works for you. For me, it's, you know, I guess I'm kind of frenetic. You know, I can watch I can watch a newscast and think like, oh wait, I think that kind of relates to what I'm doing. I think that's kind of connected, and then I may take some notes at that time, and then get to it later. Or I may, you know, read a newspaper article and say, oh, I think that's connects to what I'm talking about as well. I do work on religion and politics, so I say, oh yeah, I think that you know, that Trump's evangelical advisory team, I think that kind of relates to what I'm talking about as well. Maybe I can use that, and I can use some of that to help me for when I'm trying to formulate my own argument. So for me, I am kind of frenetic. You know, I can watch a television show or a news program or read a newspaper article, and I'll take some notes on it, then I'll get to it later. That works for me. So I think that it's best to pay attention to how we write, and when we feel the most energized and most efficient. And then once we understand that, do it. If it works for you, do that. Yeah.
I also think that sometimes I think of it as a toolbox, because what works at one period of time may not always work in another. I work differently in the summer than I do in the school year, during the academic year. I'm working different now in this current context than I do under a typical academic year. And so having some of those, like, just tricks that you can pull out when things aren't going well, using a timer, you know, doing some, having an accountability buddy, you know, parallel play where you get on Zoom with somebody, or in another lifetime go to a coffee shop with somebody, sit down across the table from them and work together. You know, those are all kinds of tricks that can help when things are not going well. Because there are times when, you know, I've got my morning set, but I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, I don't want to write today. And sometimes you need to take the time off, but if you do that too many days in a row, then, you know, that becomes a problem. So some of those other tricks to get you going.
I think I was going to say one of the other, I agree, like, that things change over the course of the year, and then that changes also over the course of your career. I was wondering if you could comment on, I know we talked about teaching, but how about mentoring? Because I think part of the other piece of it is, I think students can be a real source of productivity. They certainly can be a real source of, you know, kind of, they don't know what they don't know, and so sometimes, like, they come new ideas, or they've got energy to kind of do data collection. They can be very affordable, you know, kind of members of your research team, but they also can take a tremendous amount of time. And so I wonder if you kind of have any strategies for, or if that's something you want to talk about later, but just strategies for working with students effectively, at least for those who are going to be in situations where they would be expected to do mentoring, whether that's at the, I've not had success having that at the undergraduate level, but certainly at the graduate level, I think, like, that's been kind of critical to my own success.
I think one of the best experiences I had was early on, when I had an undergraduate, a master's student, and a doctoral student all working on the same project. And some of it was just serendipity of who those people were, because I don't necessarily think that I knew what I was doing, but in retrospect, I can kind of look back and see of the kind of the things that I did that helped it. Some of it is sort of assessing the skills of each of the students, and making sure you're giving them tasks that are appropriate to where they are. we had weekly team meetings where we very clearly, set like the goals and tasks for the week ahead and reviewed what had been done, and if things were not done, going over why, and trying to correct some of that stuff. And then I had the doctoral student really helped mentor the master student. The master student really helped mentor the undergraduate student. And so that became part of their roles and responsibilities to sort of, and at one point we were able to then move our full team meetings to every other week because they were doing weekly work together. Again, that was somewhat luck of the draw because of just the nature of those particular students. But in a perfect world, that was certainly, it worked really well. And then our team meetings, I also spent some of that time of like teaching skills. So again, it was sort of blocking the tasks and trying to schedule them in a way so that it's, in kind of a set period of time that I'm focusing on X, Y, and Z, and figuring out what they could each do. I don't know, what experiences have others had in working with students?
Well, I can talk about somebody else's. I can talk about my own experiences. Early on, I worked with undergraduate students in our undergraduate research opportunity program, the UROP program at our university. And for me, I think I worked with, I think they were in their second year. And for me, it was like teaching another class. It was almost like a directed study class for them. So it was good for service. I could put it on my Vita for service. But in terms of research, it didn't, well, I was teaching another class. Essentially, that's what I was doing because it felt like a directed study. So in that case, in terms of my research, it didn't help my research working with these young undergraduate students, but it did count for service. And I did that one time before I went up for tenure. Working with doctoral students was very different. I mean, the doctoral students that I work with, their research is close enough to mine where we can write together. So I've written a couple co-authored articles. Something with my son. I've written a couple co-authored articles with my students because their research is close enough aligned with mine, so that it makes sense. And we've also presented papers at conferences together as well. So for doctoral students whose research is close enough aligned to your own, to me it makes a lot of sense if you can trust them and they're highly vested in the research because they're getting something out of it as well. To me, that makes sense. For undergraduate students, I think for me, I would almost count that as service, unless you're working with extremely highly motivated students that want to go into public health or social work and do the type of research that you want to do. And so they see it in their interest to do well. But otherwise, it's beneficial if you see it as service, but not beyond that if you're working with very young undergraduate students, freshmen or sophomores.
I don't know what if people have expectations around service. I mean, I'm sure you do, but how much you're protected from doing service. I'm wondering, sometimes I think also, so your comments made me think about requests to do service or requests to be on a dissertation committee or work with a student that doesn't mesh well, and how to say no to opportunities. That was something that I had to learn the hard way. I don't know if other people have similar experiences or have thoughts about how to say no to opportunities. I mean, I can share a couple of things that I learned. One, obviously it's different depending on who's asking. but I learned to never say yes to something in the moment. So, you know, you're at a faculty meeting and somebody grabs you as you're walking out of the room and like, hey, I've got this great opportunity, you know, would you serve on this, be on this panel for X, Y, or Z, or mentor this student? And I learned to never respond in that moment, but to, you know, say something like, oh, that sounds really, really interesting. Let me get back to you. Because then I can go away and, you know, send an email later or something and make it a little easier to just say, you know, that's a great opportunity. I appreciate you thinking about me, but looking at my schedule, you know, I wouldn't be able to do a good job. I wouldn't be able to give it the time that it deserves or something like that. So there's ways of letting people down, and also saying like, you know, but keep me in mind for future opportunities. Those sorts of things I think are really helpful. And also just keeping track. So one of the things that I didn't do very well in the first couple of years was, you know, there were a lot of exciting opportunities. Some of them were research related, actually, but and so I said yes to some things where, you know, they ended up not being a good collaborator or some other things. Or I said yes really quickly to things because I'd kind of just lost track of all the things that I'd said yes to. So, you know, I think that some of that, just paying attention. I see this comment from Rihanna, having a no committee. Yep, that's a really good, so somebody, I'm going to interpret what that means, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rihanna, but, you know, a group of people you can go to and like share this opportunity with and have them tell you no, you need to say no to that. Practice in November. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what that means. I don't think I can interpret that.
Sure. So, like, I flatly say no to anything that comes across my desk in the month of November, because November is right after a stressful midterm. Whatever people are asking is going to probably run up against the end of the semester. So literally anything that comes across my desk, I say no. And it's just good practice for the rest of the year. Just like, it could be the best, most shiny, you know, experience on the face of the planet. And I'm just like, no, thanks, bye. Like, it's just very cut and dry. And it helps me to say it the rest of the year as well.
That's a great idea. I'm going to steal that. I like it. And that gets to also understanding kind of the flow of work over the semester, right? I mean, you recognize that this is just like a really stressful time, and paying attention to kind of the ups and downs of the semester. The other thing is, you know, that planning the semester webinar, one of the things that kind of goes with that is the Sunday meeting that they talk about doing, where you basically sit down and look at all the things that you have to do that week. You write them out, you put all the things in your calendar that are non-negotiable, and then you try and take all of those things and figure out when you're going to do them. And usually I try and do that most weeks. It makes me hyperventilate, because there's always more to do than fits. But kind of doing that also at the semester level or across the academic level year with commitments, what you've agreed to do and where the work will fall, can also help with the saying no. You know, if you've done your regular kind of check-in and have tried to put stuff into your calendar and get that reality, then you know, you have a better sense of really, I don't have any bandwidth left for this. And yes, Rihanna, I also have moved that to, actually, I keep calling it a Sunday meeting, but I moved it to Friday afternoon as well, because Sunday evenings I don't wanna. I'm still in weekend mode, I hope, most of the time, and I don't want to have to go do that shocking process at the end of my weekend. So whatever time works for you, but the idea is the same.
I mean, I would also just, I mean, one of the things I got into is like, I was at this small place and like, you know, things aren't great. Like, oh, this website should get fixed or da, da, da. And I would like say these problems at a faculty meeting and they're like, that's your job now to solve that. And if you, and you should not do that at all. Like, you should solve no department-wide problem at all. Don't even, I mean, do not feel even the remotest amount of guilt about flatly and completely rejecting any sort of leadership role that is not leading to publications or grants, period. Like, just feel no guilt. And having the no committee, or in my case, what was really helpful is my primary research mentor was outside of my department. And so I would tell this person, I'm like, I need you to tell my chair that I can't do that because I'm committed 75% on this K, and this request is going to violate that commitment. And you are mad because I'm such a unproductive scientist, and like literally just like throw me under the bus to prevent me from having to do this thing. But you've just absolutely, under no circumstances. And if you've committed to that, if you have said yes to that, you've got to get out of it. And the way you get out of it is you're just like, I was on this call with my Muckwire scientist mentor, and they told me I got to do this. And like, it's critical to the mission of this. They gave me this money, or they're part of my mentorship team. I'll help you find somebody else, and I'll make sure I'll provide a smooth transition here. But like, this has to happen.
Yeah, I've had conversations with junior faculty in my institution and elsewhere where there's like, we need this in our school for our students, or there's this big gap, and I feel like really strongly about this and passionate about it, and my response is always no. Because you need to be, if you spend your time doing that and don't get tenured, you won't have a job here, you won't be able to do it later. So it's like we don't have to do everything now. You want to be around to try and fix those things in the future. So I totally agree with that.
I know it was called the No Committee for a good reason, but I will say that my No Committee has helped me say yes to some good things that I might have otherwise said no to, because there are certain things that, come across your desk, and maybe, you're overwhelmed, or you don't quite see like the benefit of doing something that the committee can, help you to see clearly. So one example for me was I got a speaking invitation, and I was like, I don't think I have time for this, and all these other reasons why I could have said no. But then after talking to them about, who was going to be there and the opportunity, and I said yes, and I'm really glad that I did. So I think, the no committee may sometimes lead you to say yes to things that you might have otherwise said no to, but for really good reasons.
Yeah, I think that also speaks to the importance of having multiple mentors that are kind of in different places. Bree mentioned like your research mentor wasn't in your department, so they had kind of a different say, different ability to say, and having people from different perspectives without having too many cooks, and different mentors play different roles. Yeka, were you gonna say something?
I was. It's Maika, and I was gonna say something about struggling to decide, well, maybe this is I have trust issues, but struggling to decide whether the people that I go to as mentors or no committee members are acting in my interest or theirs. And so that's just something that I always try to weigh out in my mind a little bit. So I really liked your comment about the committee members being in different places, and if they are also indifferent, like not, their success doesn't ride on yours in any way. They just want to see you win. Like, to me, that's the best kind.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's okay to drop mentors, if they're not being helpful. And sometimes,
how do you approach a conversation like that, to drop a mentor or to remove them?
I knew that was coming as soon as I said that. Sometimes, so I've had a couple of instances where I have quote unquote dropped mentors where it really kind of just died a natural death. So that was sort of would be, I guess, the ideal, where you basically, you stop reaching out to them, and it kind of just, goes away. But if it's a more formal relationship, I think that it's kind of like approaching any kind of difficult conversation, or any of those like really difficult, tricky conversations, trying to start out with validating kind of the good things that they have done, and hopefully there are some, and that maybe, couching it in terms of, I'm in a different place and need different types of things right now. So trying to make it, as this is the social worker in me, sorry, as strengths-based as possible, and not sort of, you're not a good mentor, go away. It's as much as you can, and then sometimes you do need to have other people step in for you if you can. I don't know, other people who've had to do that have any suggestions on how to have those conversations?
I didn't drop a mentor, but the same research mentor that I had, we had a very difficult, it was the most challenging mentoring relationship I've ever had in my career. Just a really, this person was just superhuman, publishes literally hundreds of papers a year, blocks out 6 hours every morning to write. Like, it's just a different situation. And I had a miscarriage, and as part of that was taking medical leave. And all I said was like, I was going to be out for I think it was taking a week, of medical leave, right? Not doing anything except what I needed to. And this person got very upset that I was canceling canceled a meeting, demanded to know what was wrong with me, and I was like, I'm sick. I don't need to tell you my fucking medical history to tell you, like, I use those words. And I didn't see that person for 2 months. Like, after I did tell him what was going on eventually. And then I said, like, I will let you know when I can see you again. And when I was able to see this person again, I had just sort of come to a place where I could use them for what they could help me with, and asked absolutely nothing else of them. So they were my mentor on my K Award. I had to continue to work with them. There was nobody else there that could serve this role. And I didn't feel that I wanted to abandon that relationship, but it was clear that it was never going to be the relationship that I have with James or with some of my other mentors, right? It was never going to be that. And when I accepted that, he commented on how much like better our relationship was, and how much more productive I was seeming, and how much more effective our meetings were. And for me, I was just sort of like playing a little role in our meetings, where I'm like, all right, I'm here, I'm going to work through this agenda, done, close it up, leave. And so I guess I agree, like, if you just kind of like ghost on them, they'll figure it out. But I do think it's also, for me, it was about me defining the terms of that mentor-mentee relationship differently. And it took a crisis in my case to do that. But then that was a way that I was able to myself kind of say, like, not how do I use this person per se, but like accepting this relationship is only going to affect this part of my life, and I'm going to stop allowing it to affect all this other parts of my life, both good and bad.
Yeah, because sometimes mentors, they can play a real emotional support role and offer lots of other sorts of life advice. Robert Taylor was my dissertation chair, and I have kind of that relationship with him that has evolved over time after I've graduated and moved on. And then there's other people that it is very much like, I need this mentor to help me with this this data analysis piece, or this thinking through sort of this research piece, and that's kind of it. So I think your example, Bree, is sort of also like that mentor wasn't really equipped to provide sort of the emotional piece. I mean, I have fellow faculty colleagues who basically, like, if a student comes into their office and is dealing with a non-academic issue, and like, students are not allowed to cry in their office. Students are not allowed, it's like they interact with students and they have very clear boundaries, like, this is what I provide and this is it. And they're pretty upfront about that. And just people know that. And then, there's other people where it's like, I've got the box of tissues in my office ready at all times because, they interact with students as human beings on a lot of different levels. So even as mentors, I think you also have to kind of figure out what you're comfortable providing as a mentor too.
No, I think the only additional piece that I would add is that the purpose of a mentor should be to assist you, to aid you, to help you in your intellectual thinking, help you think through papers or grants or teaching strategies. If you get something from them in that regard, then I'll continue interacting with them and asking them for advice. If they're not helping, then I wouldn't reach out to them any further. I would reach out to someone that can. That was my approach. And also I've noticed also that some of my former students that are junior faculty members, they continue to email me and ask for advice, and others don't. So I assume that those that continue to email me and time to time we have Zoom meetings, that they appreciate the advice that I'm giving. They get something from it. Those that don't email me, they don't. I don't take it personal. So that's my advice. I mean, similar to Amanda, Robert was my dissertation chair, and I've continued to write with him. I get a lot from it in terms of, intellectually thinking through ideas, as well as opportunities to write and publish, as well as to opportunities to submit grants. So it helps me. It helps my career, and I continue to interact with him. And when he asks me to do things, I do it because I like Robert. He's a nice guy, and in addition, our relationship has helped me. So I see benefit in it. So I continue to go to him for mentoring. Those individuals that can't help me, I don't reach out to them. And I'm sure they don't take it personal. In fact, I don't know what to think, but
Well, and if they do, that's on them, right?
that's on them. Yeah, but I can't do anything about that. Right.
I'm cognizant of the time. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I wanted to see if there is sort of a burning issue, burning challenge, something that someone's dying to ask we haven't talked about.
Oh, I'll bring up an issue, unless someone else can say something. Last point that I'll make is that I noticed when I was a junior faculty member that, the women in our department had children right around the time they went up for tenure, and they requested an additional year on their tenure clock. And I had kids, and it didn't, I'm a man, so I didn't have the kids, so it didn't stop me. But I do think it's important that you may want to think about it, asking for an additional year. The women in my department, they did that, and the chairs were, the dean, that was perfectly fine, and they all got tenure. But if you're having kids or taking care of kids, or even if you're taking care of an elderly parent, that is something that I would talk with your chair about in terms of extending your tenure clock.
Yeah, I don't think there's no shame, or there shouldn't be, let me put it that way,
No.
extending the tenure clock. We've had colleagues who've done that for a number of reasons. And also I know the current circumstances, different institutions are maybe approaching it differently in terms of what's going on with COVID-19. I know I looked up what MSU is doing. They are delaying by 1 year the tenure clock for any faculty member who is due to come up for reappointment or promotion during the 2021 academic year. And so that's automatic. You can request to not, you can elect to not do that and go ahead and go up, but that delay is automatic. And
Do
then,
you think that's sufficient?
well, I'm not entirely sure if that, I don't know that that's sufficient. No, I mean, that's only for people who are going up next year, right? So the question that I have is sort of whether they're gonna then consider that, consider the circumstances moving forward for people going up later, because your research has come to a screeching halt, right? Particularly if you're doing human subjects research. I suspect that's going to vary across the university. I'm on the College of Social Science RPT committee. So at least for my little group of people, I will have some say, and we'll certainly be advocating that as we're looking at people's packets, that we take that into account. But I don't know how consistent that's going to be. Katrina?
Yes. Here in, I don't know if it's at Michigan or the School of Social Work more broadly, but there is an option to delay the tenure clock for assistant professors, and it doesn't have to do with when you're going up. So if you're on the tenure track now, you can delay for a year. We haven't really had conversations about the pros and cons of that, so I have not made a decision either way. I'm kind of unsure at this point, because I think it's helpful. I'm glad they made the offer, but I also, thinking about taking longer before going up, like, I don't know if I want to do that. I want to see if I can still kind of stay on track. So I'm not sure what to do about that, actually. So I have it in the back of my mind, but I don't know if anyone else has been thinking about whether or not to take that offer if they have it on the table as well.
And I would hope that, like at MSU, faculty can petition for extending the tenure clock, if this stop has really hindered your productivity. I think, there's going to be variability. Like the College of Social Science, MSU is a mixed bag. Like we've got economics, social work, criminal justice, psychology, history. It's like it's a very diverse college, and so the impact on people is going to be variable. And so I hope that there will be leniency across the university in terms of considering requests to delay the tenure clock. I mean, I think, if you're trying to do human subjects research right now, you've got a really good argument for the clock, because you basically are going to have to restart a project, and it's going to, it's going to take a while, and we don't really know when that's going to happen. So I think that a lot of that still, I think, Muckwar faculty are happy. I'm sure I am. I will volunteer others as well to kind of talk through some of that and think about arguments and how to advocate for that too, as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are right at 10:59. So, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I appreciate folks showing up. I hope this was helpful. And please feel free to reach out to either myself or Kahari. I will volunteer you, Kahari, as well.
No problem. Yeah.
With any questions or things you want to touch base about. So have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.